My name is Lily Hargrove. I was 34 years old the day my mother decided my sister's entire future was a rumor to be managed. Cassie was 19. There was a photograph. There was talk. And in Greer Falls, South Carolina, talk doesn't walk, it sprints. So my parents found her a husband, a good family, a recognizable last name, a quiet wedding to make a loud problem disappear before it could cool. My sister was too frightened to say a single word about any of it. I didn't raise my voice when it came apart. I didn't threaten. I didn't argue. I asked one question at the engagement lunch, set a single folded piece of paper on the table, and watched the whole arrangement collapse before the dessert plates were cleared. I live 3 hours from where I grew up, a one-bedroom apartment in Columbia that is mine, paid for, and quiet. I'm a paralegal at a family law firm on Assembly Street, which means I spend my days inside other people's worst weeks. Custody disputes, annulments, people who signed documents they were too scared to actually read. I put myself through school working overnight shifts at a Holiday Inn off I-26. I was the first Hargrove to leave Greer Falls without being carried out. My family is proud of that, the way you're proud of a scar. They mention it. I call home every Sunday at 6 p.m. I've done it for 11 years. Not because the calls are warm, because somewhere deep in my chest, there's a debt I've never paid. And her name is Cassie. She was 4 when I left for school. I told myself she'd be fine in that house. I told myself a lot of things. The phone rang at 11:07 on a Tuesday night. The screen said, "Mom, my mother does not call late. My mother believes phone calls after 9 p.m. are for emergencies and bad character." I answered before the second ring. Already cold. Already certain something in Greer Falls had finally come loose. "There's talk about your sister." "No, hello." Her voice pulled tight as wire. "We're handling it." I asked what kind of talk. She made a sound like she was tasting something gone off. "The kind that follows a family," she said. "The kind that doesn't wash out." I tried to picture Cassie at the center of anything loud. Cassie is the gentlest person in our entire bloodline. She wants to be a nurse. She cries at dog food commercials. My mother told me only that Cassie had been seen somewhere. She shouldn't have been at an hour that looked bad, and that people were saying things. What things? I said, it doesn't matter what's true. For Stings, it matters what they think they saw. I heard a cloth moving in the background, a steady wipe and squeak. She was polishing the dining room table in the front room. She only does that for important company. The whole room would smell like lemon oil, sharp enough to sting your eyes. The smell of our family putting its best face on. I told her I'd drive up that weekend. She didn't argue. She just told me to wear something nice. "We're having guests." I drove up Saturday morning with the windows down and a knot sitting in my stomach the whole 3 hours. When you come over the ridge into Greer Falls, you can see the water tower, the Baptist steeple, and the gold letters of my father's hardware store catching the early sun. Hargrove Hardware, Est, 1979. The name on the window is the business, and the business is the name, and both of them sit heavier on this family than anything you could weigh. I stopped for gas at the Shell station on Route 14. A man I'd known since Sunday school looked at me about a half second too long. Then he looked away fast. The way people do when they've been talking about your family and you've walked in mid-sentence. I paid, said nothing. Sat in my car with my hands on the wheel. Whatever the talk was, it had already grown legs. In a town like Greer Falls, by the time a rumor reaches you, it's been to church twice and supper 4 times, and nobody remembers where it started or whether it was ever true. I got the real story in pieces. 2 weeks earlier, Cassie had driven her friend Becca home from a graduation party at a house on Millbrook Road. Becca was sick, drunk, scared to call her own mother. So Cassie helped her up the stairs to Becca's apartment on the 3rd floor, stayed until she stopped shaking, and left around 2:15 in the morning. Someone in the parking lot saw a girl leaving a young man's building before dawn. The young man was Becca's older brother, who had been asleep the entire time. By the time the story reached the church parking lot the following Sunday, my 19-year-old sister had spent the night with a man. By the time it reached my mother's kitchen, she was, in my mother's exact words, as good as ruined. That was the entire crime. A kind girl doing a kind thing in the dark. I sat at our kitchen table and felt something old and hot move through me. Because I knew this town. I knew the truth would not catch up. The truth never wears running shoes in Greer Falls. I told my mother what actually happened. Every detail. Names. Times. The third floor of the Becca's building on Millbrook. She listened with her arms folded across her chest. When I finished, she said the thing I will hear in my sleep for the rest of my life. It's not about what happened. It's about what people believe. Then, my mother told me to come into the front room. The lemon oil hit me first. That polished table smell I've hated since childhood. The long dining table gleamed like a held breath. She sat down her rag. She faced me. Cassie is going to get engaged. I laughed. Because it had to be a joke. She did not laugh. To whom? I asked. A good young man, a good family. I told her Cassie was 19, that she had plans, that she wanted to start nursing school in Greenville in the fall. My mother lifted her chin. Plans don't keep a roof over a reputation. I pushed harder. I asked if anyone had actually asked Cassie what she wanted. My mother looked at me with a patience so cold it could frost a window. Her feelings don't matter, Lily, only what people will say. The grandfather clock in the corner ticked into the silence. I've heard a lot of cruel things said gently in my line of work. I have watched men in conference rooms explain calmly why their wives didn't deserve representation, but I had never heard my own mother fold my sister that small, that calm, like folding a letter you don't plan to send. Then my father came in from the store at 5 p.m. and explained the rest, the way he explains a supply order, plainly, like there was no other reasonable arrangement. Garrett Caldwell has agreed to marry your sister. His family has seen the sense in it. Garrett Caldwell, 26. From the family that ran the regional insurance offices on Main. I grew up 2 pews behind them. I understood immediately that tonight's supper was going to be a transaction. A wedding settles things, my father said, pouring coffee he wasn't going to drink. People stop talking when there's a ring and a date. There was also an election coming, of a kind. My father up for a seat on the county land. Use board, the sort of small-town position that means everything to a man who has spent 50 years being respectable. A scandal with the Hargrove name on it would sink it. A good marriage, he said, tells everybody the story's over. I asked him if he realized he was trading his daughter to win a vote. He didn't flinch. I'm protecting this family. And the worst part, he believed it. They'd given it to her before they'd given her a choice. It was too large. A Caldwell heirloom sized for a different woman's hand, and it slid loose every time she turned it, so she kept turning it around and around. A small, frightened motion she didn't know she was making. She looked up at me and tried to smile. The smile broke me in half. Hey, Lil, she said. I sat beside her. I asked her gently if she wanted this. She looked at the carpet. Mom says it's the only way to fix it. She says Garrett's nice. She says I'll learn to. I asked again. Slower. Not what Mom said. What did she want? Cassie's eyes filled. I want them to stop being ashamed of me, she whispered. I'll just try to be a good girl about it. And there it was. Lily watched Margaret Caldwell walk through the front door like she was inspecting a property she intended to purchase. Silver-haired, composed, running her eyes over the good room with a small approving nod. The way you grade a child's homework. Behind her came Garrett. 20. 6 broad, already bored. He shook Lily's father's hand too hard, and barely looked at Cassie. When he did, it was the look you give a car you've already agreed to buy, just checking it hasn't been dented since the test drive. Dinner was polished and cold. Margaret complimented the china and asked Cassie nothing. When Lily steered the conversation toward what Cassie actually wanted, Margaret set down her fork and smiled with her whole cold face. This isn't about feelings, dear. It's about families. Then Garrett, helping himself to more ham, said Cassie would settle in fine. They all do. The way you'd say a fence would hold. Clearing plates after dessert, Lily made herself useful in the kitchen, where the real conversation was happening. The Caldwells wanted 17 acres of Hargrove land along Sycamore Creek. a parcel Lily's father had refused to sell for 20 years. And Garrett had a problem of his own. Something from the previous spring, a girl 2 counties over, a check that had quietly made it disappear. His mother wanted him visibly married before it could resurface. This wasn't a rescue, it was a swap. Cassie wasn't the bride, she was the contract term. That night, alone with her laptop, Lily stopped thinking like a daughter and started thinking like a paralegal. She called Ruth, the senior attorney at her firm, 30 years in family court. Ruth walked her through it carefully. In South Carolina, a marriage is a civil contract. Consent extracted under pressure makes it voidable, meaning Cassie could walk into a courthouse any day and ask a court to undo it. What the Caldwells were buying was a house built on sand. The next afternoon, Lily drove to the county clerk's office on Court Square and picked up a marriage license application, a public document anyone could request. It stated plainly, both applicants must appear in person, sign their own names, swear that nobody forced them. No proxy, no parent signing for an adult child. One more stop, Pastor Dale Whitfield, the man slated to perform the wedding. Lily didn't push. She just asked one soft question, would he be comfortable standing up there if he had real reason to believe the bride was being made to do it? Dale looked out the window for a long moment. A pastor doesn't like to think he's part of something forced. That was enough. The engagement lunch was held at First Baptist Fellowship Hall on a Saturday in early October. Neighbors in their Sunday clothes, lemon oil sharp in the air. Lily's mother's best china on long white clothed tables. Cassie sat in her pressed dress, turning that loose ring under the tablecloth where she thought no one could see. When Cassie was asked to stand and say a few words, she rose and nothing came out. 5 seconds of awful silence. The silence of a girl who had been told her whole life that no was not a word she was allowed. Lily stood up, quietly. No drama. She reached into her bag, placed the folded clerk's form flat on the white tablecloth, and looked at Margaret Caldwell. When Cassie and your son go to the county clerk's office for their license, they'll each have to stand at that window in person and sign their own names. No one can sign for them. And a marriage entered under pressure is what the law calls voidable. It stands only until the person who was coerced asks a court to undo it, grounds that don't expire the morning after the wedding. She paused. My one question is this. Has anyone in either of these 2 families planned for the morning Cassie walks into a courthouse alone and tells a judge she was forced? Because every single person at this table just became a witness that she was. The room went silent. Margaret did the math fast. The land wasn't worth a marriage a court could dissolve, with the whole county watching the Caldwell name drag through an annulment. She stood, gathered her purse, said Garrett's name once. It was not a request they left. Cassie reached up and worked that too. Large ring off her finger, set it on the white tablecloth with a small, soft click. No, she said. I never said yes. Nobody ever asked me. Pastor Dale stood slowly. I won't be performing any wedding the bride didn't ask for. The whole arrangement gone, right in front of every witness Lily's mother had so carefully gathered to celebrate it.